The member for Pascoe Vale.
Thank you, Acting Chair, and to the member for Brunswick for that short and sharp contribution. Thank you. Look, I'd like to just begin, of course, by acknowledging the contribution generally of our aged and elderly community and all of our elders in helping us build a modern, vibrant, prosperous Victoria, and of course my community of Pascoe Vale, Coburg and Brunswick West that we've been fortunate to inherit. And also the contribution, of course, of generation of those Victorian elders that we must never forget, that we must continue to respect. That includes the elders from First Nations communities who for 60,000 years provided that custodianship for the lands we've now founded our communities on, our first settlers, our pioneers, our early generation of migrants and multicultural migrants who came to this country to seek a better life. All of whom have all played a role in contributing to building modern-day, vibrant, resilient Victoria. And that's why we must do all that we can as policymakers, whether in government or as parliamentarians, to ensure that we treat and support our older, elderly, retiree and pensioner communities as best we can so that all Victorians can be supported to age well, live healthy, active and purposeful lives as they grow older. We must ensure older Victorians are able to safely age at their home or in appropriate aged care and older persons settings with the opportunity to maintain that independence, that dignity and that connection to family, friends and the community. And with our population, of course, continuing to age, we need to make sure that these policy settings are continually reviewed and strengthened, particularly when it comes to retirement villages, so that we're keeping pace with that growth and demand. It is projected, Acting Speaker, that the number of Australians aged 85 and over will increase from 515,000 or 2% of the population today to more than 1.5 million by 2058, or almost 4% of the population. At a state level, we've got, of course, the Ageing Well Victoria strategy to guide our work as a government. In 2021, we had 1.5 million Victorians aged 60 and over, or 22% of the population. And by 2046, it is anticipated that this age cohort will increase by 60%. And I acknowledge the member for Melton's contribution in leading that cohort. Of more than 2.3 million people, and over 25% of the population will be aged over 60 in coming years. And at a local level in Marybeck, my community, we are supporting our elderly community through our council's Living and Ageing Well in Marybeck framework. We currently have a quite high proportion of residents in all age groups over 75, which is higher than the Melbourne and Australian averages. Empty nesters and retirees aged 60 to 69 account for about just under 13,000 residents, or 7.6% of our community. And over 12,400 residents are considered seniors, aged between 70 and 84 years of age. He's on the mark there, Melton, making up 7.3% of our community. Over 4,600 residents are aged over 85 years, so 2.7% of our community compared to 2% across Greater Melbourne. And Acting Speaker, as the older population grows, of course, this places more pressure on aged services and aged care homes. And I refer my members to my previous contribution on the Aged Care Restrictive Substitutions Act that we previously moved on the details on those reforms in the aged care sector particularly. But when it comes to retirement homes and long-term retirement accommodation, this bill is all about that sector. Across Australia, there's 750 approved aged care providers who manage 2,600 Commonwealth subsidised residential services and 2,300 retirement villages across Australia. That equates to what I'm advised here is retirement homes, about 458 operators, which accommodate about 200,000 independent living units. And according to the Retirement Living Council and also the ABS of 2021, almost 250,000 Australians live in retirement villages, a 24% increase compared to 5 years ago. And demand is continuing to increase across Victoria. We've got 513 retirement villages according to Consumer Affairs Victoria, and 36,000 Victorians living in retirement villages. So that's growing. And industry forecasts are predicting 18,000 retirement dwellings will still need to be built between now and 2030. And industry reports that these dwellings and the sector more broadly can help reduce Australia's housing shortage and housing crisis by 18% by 2030 if we continue to support the sector to grow. through a further 49,000 retirement living dwellings being built over those coming years and reducing that supply gap by 67%. And of course, as I said, as demand grows, so too does the demographics and the makeup and the needs of those individuals who are entering these retirement villages. Victorians are entering villages later in life with an average entry age of 76 years old, when the average length of tenure in a retirement village is now about 8.4 years. So many residents are also receiving more home care services to support their continued stay in the villages, as reported by the Property Council of Australia and PwC. Retirement living census, 61% of operators in Australia reported providing regulated home care services to residents, an increase of 46% in 2022. And this bill is designed to address some of those growing needs. It's informed, of course, by detailed reviews and public consultations, has been shaped by feedback that we have received from residents, operators, industry stakeholders and consumer advocates. In 2016 and 2017, the Legislative Council's Legal and Social Issues Committee, as we've heard, have undertook an inquiry into the operation and regulation of the retirement housing sector, and the inquiry highlighted those concerns about contract complexity, unfair fees, dispute resolution mechanisms, and recommending the Retirement Villages Act be reviewed. And of course, in response to the inquiry, the government did commit to undertaking that comprehensive review of the Act. While several significant changes to the Act have occurred since 1986, the Act has not been subject to a comprehensive review since 2004. The government launched the review in October 2019, releasing an issues paper for public consultation, which I have here, but we'll have limited time to go through, and received more than 150 submissions from retirement village owners, residents, their families, researchers and other interested parties. And this bill is informed by that substantive work. It amends the Retirement Villages Act of 1986 to improve the regulation of retirement villages generally, further provides for the needs of the ageing and diverse residents in retirement villages. It provides consumer protections and additional mechanisms to support the interests of residents in retirement villages, provides for that regulation that anticipates that future growth, which I was touching on earlier, and innovation in the retirement sector, provides further protection of rights, interests and needs of current and future residents of villages and residents that are importantly leaving retirement villages and for their families, providing processes for resolving those disputes between residents, operators and proprietors of retirement villages, and of course makes a number of other minor amendments. The bill introduces 5 overarching principles that are intended to use and guide the interpretation of the Retirement Villages Act, and basically elevate the status of a resident's preference to remain in a retirement village should they want to and be respected to, and that all residents, it goes without saying, but we need to legislate this, should be treated with dignity and respect. And we have seen in those cases of the federal government's Royal Commission in this space, just where a lack of regulation, a lack of oversight can tragically and sadly lead to when it comes to abuse and trauma, which we want to prevent and mitigate as much as possible, which this Act in the retirement villages space will help now begin better mitigating against. The bill includes a regulation making power enabling the establishment of a code of practice which will require operators to participate in the scheme in good faith and comply with any agreements reached during conciliation. And non-compliance with the code may result in the regulatory action by the Director of Consumer Affairs Victoria. That code will be developed by the Director of Consumer Affairs and approved by the Minister for Consumer Affairs to enshrine mandatory professional conduct obligations to provide guidance for operators in retirement villages. The bill proposes to consolidate and clarify a number of other mechanisms in the Act, including requiring operators to pay an exit entitlement to a vacating resident within a specified period, which would be the earliest of a time determined under the retirement village contract, the time agreed between the parties, 12 months after the resident gives vacant possession of their unit, and allowing a vacating resident to go to VCAT to get an order for the payment of an exit entitlement by an operator if it has not been paid in that specified period. I did hear as well, and I stand to be corrected here, but I'm pretty sure I heard the member for Ovens Valley in his opening remarks basically make some criticism of some portions of the Act, including the increased obligation on some of the operators who will have to be more regularly on an annual basis advising residents in their particular properties and dwellings of the amounts owed on an annual occurring basis. And apparently this creates potentially too much red tape for the operator and it is just a bridge too far. But the reality is, you know, as far as I know, a lot of these retirement villages, I'm sure, would have a few accountants on the books that can calculate on a regular basis for business interests and needs, you know, what the asset base is, what the depreciation, what the liabilities are. So if the work is already being done on behalf of the business or the operator of an aged care village, why not just leverage that work and provide that information annually or more regularly to the residents so that the resident and their families thereafter know what they're in for, basically, at the end of their tenancy at a particular village. Look, I've run out of time. I commend the bill to the chamber. I commend the Minister for Consumer Affairs for this bill.